Hello, everyone, and welcome to a different kind of thing, what we do on Tuesdays. Yes, sometimes you watch me sit around, play a game. Well, tonight you get to watch me, or my talking hands, yes, talk to you about this thing what I built, the SteamBox 360, yes. Disregard the keyboard up there and the fact that you can see the bottom of the monitors. You don't pay attention to that. This is all about the SteamBox 360, which was a project which for me, well, it took me the better part of this year to actually complete. Let's see, I started it. I guess you could say I started it when I got the broken Xbox 360 from coworker Dave. Big thanks to Dave. And he provided me with the broken Xbox 360, which I then proceeded to buy the power supply and the rest of the components. Okay, so it's running right now. It's not actually plugged into a monitor. I'm going to turn it off by reaching over to the power button, which is right around here. Come on. There we go. And off it goes. So next, I'm going to unplug the power cable and show you inside. There we go. While I do that, have a look at the specs, which should be on screen right now. So, I've already started taking it apart. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. That's the front. And yes, as you can see, it was white originally. No more. Right, that's why I drilled these holes. So I can push it free. There we go. Okay. Ah, yes. Taking the front apart is always a bit of a chore. Let's see. If you have any questions, if you have anything you'd like to ask or say, feel free to. If you're on Discord, if you're on IRC, it's you can see the chat right there. I'll keep an eye on it as I figure out where the latches are that I need to pull. Let's see. Come on. Yeah, the front's always the hardest bit. Okay, that's out. Man, braziers are really, really easy compared to this. It's just the... Okay, that bit is clear. Now this side and the middle one, which is always the toughest. Come on, don't break it on camera. There we go. Okay, it's loose. Now, this side. There we go. There we go. Here's the top. It's got a really nice PVC. Well, it's let's see, it's 3mm acrylic, and it was cut by I can remember his name, but he has a website. It's called sharkade.com. Does really awesome work with that. You can see the LEDs reflecting off of it. It's really nicely cut, and it looks really, really nice in gloss on top of the matte clear coat that I painted the case with. And now for the insides. Yes, look at it. So pretty. Okay, so the insides. This was a mess. Getting all of these cables to play nice and fit inside the Xbox 360 cage was just insane. Here, I'll put up some pictures down the right side. There you go. Can have a look at the pictures as I talk along. This is a Noctua NHL9A AM4. It's the AM4 variant of the L9A, which is the AMD variant of the regular L9. No, those fingers were eaten away by the time I was born. Yeah, and this sits on top of the Ryzen 5 2400G, the second generation Ryzen APU, which is actually pretty decent, but we're not talking about benchmarks just yet, so keep your panties on. In the front here, there's a fan that you can't really see, but this bit here is a teeny tiny fan, similar to these two down the side here, which they created just enough airflow to keep everything reasonably cool. When I say reasonably cool, I mean the processor idles at around 39 Celsius, which is a bit higher than I'd like, but when dealing with the, space constraint that we have right here, it's alright, I guess. Under load, it goes all the way up to 62 Celsius, but even at 100% load for over 40 minutes, it held 62 Celsius, so I'm very, very happy with that. This Molex connector here, is perhaps the bit I'm most worried about inside this build, because the motherboard has an 8-pin extra ATX power connector, which you don't really need the 8 pins. You can usually get by with just 4, but it's got those 2 extra grounds, so I felt safer to have it, even if I have to rely on this Molex adapter to create the other 4 pins that it requires. So that's me not being too happy about it. Underneath the motherboard, there's the M.2 SATA. It's M.2 SATA, Western Digital Blue 500GB SSD, which it's M.2 SATA. It's perfectly acceptable. The performance is about what you'd expect of SATA going over M.2. You always get 500 and something megabytes per second, be it reads or writes, so it's pretty good. This is the RAM. It's Corsair, obviously. It's the LPX Vengeance. They're similar to the ones I have on the desktop PC, but these only run at 3200 megahertz, which is fine, which is like the sweet spot as far as all the reviews are concerned for the Ryzen processors. You also have, let's see, this thing right here that you see sticking out, that's actually the receiver for the Steam controller. Yes, the mistress right here. Thank you very much for this, Lockdown. The Steam controller comes with teeny tiny receiver, which is now built in directly to the build itself. There's a little zip tie here pulling the cables down so that the top actually sits flush, which is kind of necessary. Again, this was never intended to be used as a computer per se with standard parts, so it helps. Power supply, it's a 300 watt 80 plus bronze Seasonic TFX power supply. Look at it, it's perfect. It's like it was designed to fit in here. It's actually really awesome. I did cut like this bit off of the top of the cage just so it would sit flush, but you actually don't have to. You could have just pulled it back a little bit, but I kind of wanted access to the ATX power port right there. And having this space here means I can cram all the unused cables to it. I've also glued a aftermarket power button right there. Let's see, there's some LED strips to create the purple effect that you saw earlier down the side of the power supply as well. There you go in the picture right now. Looks very, very purple. Let's see. I think that's mostly it for the hardware that's inside. There's a couple of adapters and a couple of cable ties hidden below here. You can see there's one holding these. PS3 Slim SteamBox. Ooh, that would be something, but I don't think I can actually do that. Let's see, maybe the original Xbox would have been easier to build into. Yes, it would have. Much easier because it's bigger. It's actually much bigger. But my point was specifically for the Xbox 360, because I'd seen someone sort of build a server into an Xbox 360, and I thought, yeah, that would be great as an actual console, as like SteamBox. Just power it up, have it boot directly into SteamOS, and boom, Bob's your uncle. Well, I sorta, kinda got it. There's just a problem. Linux support for the 2400G and the ASRock AB350 gaming ITX AC motherboard, it's not perfect. Not in the least. So with SteamOS currently, or at least at the time I was building it, the most up-to-date ISO that you could get for SteamOS was version 2. Version 2 was, let's see, that was released a while back, so the kernel is old. So old, in fact, that it can't even recognize the 2400G properly. So it wouldn't boot. It wouldn't boot at all. And with Fedora 28, well, I can get it to boot half reliably. I can get it, if it's powered off, and it has been powered off for a while, from a cold boot, it always boots just fine into the Steam Big Picture Mode session. But if I need to reboot it or turn it off and then turn it on a short while later, it's going to be a crapshoot whether or not it boots the very next time. I can usually force it to boot properly if I hold down the power button with it disconnected, and it flushes the whatever power is left in the power supply. So that's it basically for the hardware. There are still a couple of things I need to finish. I had taken the bottom and top bits out before I started the video, and this one is the one that goes on the top, and you can see that it's a bit warped. That's because I've been trying to melt it to fit flush with the top of the case. I haven't quite gotten it yet, but I will, and that's like one of the final bits that I need to do. I may also, if you'll have a look at the back here, I may also take out the I/O shield and just give it a good old coat of black paint with some clear coat so it matches the rest of the case and doesn't have that big red, those big red arrows sticking out there. I guess that's ASRock branding for you. These here are the wireless and Bluetooth antennas, obviously, because it has built-in Wi-Fi's, because why not? Alright, so with the hardware out of the way, let's talk benchmarks. Yes, I've run some benchmarks. I've run some games. I've run some not gaming benchmarks. You may remember that I did some reviews of some laptops a while back. And, well, there happened to be a laptop which was the perfect comparison point for this kind of build, which was the Entroware Kratos. It was a very good laptop, very good like desktop replacement if you're going to university and you want to have the gaming ability and still have a machine that's decent enough to do all the university work that you need. That 73, it had an i5 7300 HQ and a GTX 1050. So you pair that with the Radeon X11 and the 2400G, and you got yourself a pretty good comparison. It's not entirely fair. That's a laptop form factor. This is clearly not. The 2400G is a much newer part, but they're both quad cores. The i5 doesn't have hyper-threading, so it's 4-core 4-thread. The 2400G, of course, has SMT, so it's 4-core 8 threads. The 1050, you can probably guess right now, it's much more powerful than the Radeon RX Vega 11 that's in this APU. So keep that in mind as I show you the benchmarks. There you go. So first up we have why is it starting in multi-thread? There we go. Single thread. Geekbench 4 in single thread. And this is the bit where I expected the Kratos to trounce the APU. It didn't. In fact, the only thing that it did better at was the integer scores for the single-threaded tests. And you can see, even going by the blue on the aggregate, that it's weaker. The 7300 HQ is actually weaker as far as Geekbench is concerned than the 2400G. That made me feel very, very good. Up next, it's the multi-threaded score, and if AMD was ever good at one thing, it was the multi-threaded results. They always dominated when it came to multi-threading, and, well, they didn't disappoint here. Memory was almost double. The floating point was way higher than Intel's. Intel's, you can see that the integer clearly sticks up a little bit from the rest of the pack, but it also sticks up in the SteamBox. The crypto, well, poor old 7300 HQ Cabby Lake part can't do crypto all that well, so it again about half of what the 2400G got, and you can see by the aggregate scores, that's the blue bar there. Yeah, no, the 2400G clearly wins. Now, let's talk about games. This is where things get weird. Really, really weird. So, let's see. The SteamBox 360 in the Talos Principle in Vulkan got an average of 59.9 FERPs, 60. But in OpenGL, it got 74.5. What the hell exactly is going on with the RAD-V driver there, Fedora? Explain that one to me, please. But yeah, no, something is definitely up with the RAD-V driver. I'm not entirely sure what, but it is very clearly not performing as well as it should. And then you see the Kratos performance metrics down the side for comparison, obviously. And you can see with just the Intel GPU, that's an Intel 620 HD. It trounces it, obviously. But when it comes time to compare to the GTX 1050, well, the 1050 runs away with the score. The OpenGL score isn't all that different, but with the Vulkan score being that low on the APU, that's bad. So, what else? Dirt Rally, one of my favorite all-time games. The SteamBox, it performed admirably. This is on the high preset and the low preset. There's the legend below the graphic. You can easily identify them. On the low preset gets 57.8 FERPs on average, while on the high preset it gets 49. All of these results, of course, are averages of 3 passes. I start the game, run a pass, write down the value, run it again, write down the value, run it again, write down the value, change the preset, restarted the game because feral games tend to not let the settings stick unless you restart them, and rinse repeat. So that's the results that you got right there. And again, it trounces the Intel integrated graphics, but when it comes time to play with the big boys like 1050, it fails. I mean, don't get me wrong. 49 FPS on average in the benchmark is actually a pretty good result because you usually get around 60 to 70 FERPs in-game proper. But of course, the Kratos is scoring 75.91 on the high preset in the benchmark. So that right there is a pretty significant difference. So again, it's as you'd expect with AMD coming in the middle of the road. Then we get to Unigine Heaven, which didn't really surprise me. I mean, having already run the game benchmarks, I kind of knew what to expect. And once again, it was right in the middle of the road. 15, 14 and on the basic preset, and 415 on the extreme preset. While the GTX 1050, of course, gets 2633 on the basic and 796 on the extreme. So, yeah. And superposition, which again reflects the same trend. The big, I guess, stick out here is the fact that you get you get on the 1080p high preset, you get almost the same score that you get on the Intel dedicated graphics on 720p low preset. So yeah, that brought a smile to my face. But yeah, the results are very much along the lines of what you'd expect. But it's great when you have a 2400G, which I got for, what was it, 128 pounds? 128 pounds going neck to neck with the 7300 Cabby Lake HQ. That's significant. That right there actually makes things so much more interesting. And of course, if I go back to the not even the multi-threaded results, the single-thread processor-only results, it's like, holy cow! That's how big a performance improvement Ryzen brought over the previous AMD processor generations. That's insane. That's really, really good. So yeah, the SteamBox 360. It is. I'm going to stick around. Don't you worry. I'm not just going to end the stream at 20 minutes. I'm going to stick around and answer your questions. But that made me very, very happy, and it made me, of course, really happy to build what is, for all intents and purposes, a console out of just your standard PC parts and shove them into a console case, which goes very well into a TV cupboard somewhere. So, if anyone has questions, now is your time to shine. Let's see. Hopefully those small fans don't get overly loud at idle or under load. They are loud. They are very, very loud. It's not the fans themselves. If you just have the fans running without being attached to anything, they're actually surprisingly quiet for fans that small. But the moment you put two of them against this little metal mesh right here, the air coming through the teeny tiny holes down the side, that is what gets loud. You can hear that. You can definitely hear like the high-pitched metal whine as the air comes through. That's really, really annoying. The one in the front, you can't really hear it because it's only going against some wires and then the RAM modules, and it's going around the sides and whatnot. But yeah, and the big fan, of course, well, it looks big in comparison, but this is a 9.2 centimeter or 92 millimeter fan that the Noctua L9A has. And that one, you can hear it as the sound passes through. Where is the top? Right here. As the sound passes through the little mesh behind the Steam logo, you can hear the sound going through it, but you don't actually hear the fan itself. So as far as noise goes, it turned out to be a heck of a lot quieter than my original expectations. Let's see, a rubber dampener. That would actually be a good idea if I could find one that was, did its job at a thin enough thickness that it wouldn't introduce clearance issues down the side here. Noctuas are fairly quiet. Had to replace the stock. Yeah. No, the Noctua makes really good fans. If there's one thing they can do is make good fans. But if I had to point out one flaw, is the brown and beige. Seriously, brown and beige Noctua? Really? Yeah. I was genuinely surprised when it's working, when I can get it to boot and I can play some games. It's really awesome to see it at work. Yeah, the brown and beige. But yeah, it's Rocket Cars, Rocket League, on the high preset at 1080p full screen. It just rockets around at 60 FPS without even batting an eye. Of course, there's the explosions and the heavy particle effects on the new goal explosions and whatnot. Those will always bring the FERPs down a little bit, but that happens even on a 1080. So, yeah. Why no LEDs on the fan? Because I could have put the LEDs around the fan, yes, but I really wanted to give it that same effect that the SteamOS logo has. If you look at the damn it, I'm missing a word. The promotional materials for SteamOS, you see that there's it's evident that there's a bit of a glow coming down from the bottom, and that was the effect I was going for. Of course, this mesh that currently lives behind the Steam logo is not it's not enough. to create that diffuse light effect, so you can clearly see the Noctua and a little bit of the RAM and this little Molex adapter through it. But hey, it's let's see. How's the ASRock BIOS, and have you tried overclocking RAM or tightening timings? Yes. The ASRock BIOS, the one that it came with, was version 440, which was enough to support to get the 2400G to post. But it had issues. Namely, it wouldn't recognize SATA drives, it wouldn't recognize M.2 drives, it wouldn't recognize any drives anywhere. So I went to their website, it's like, oh, there's a newer version. All right. So I tried to use their built-in UEFI internet updater. It wouldn't work. It just wouldn't work. It just said, no, it's already in the latest version. So I flashed a little USB stick with the update, reboot it, let it run the update, and lo and behold, all of a sudden, everything is working. Including the temperature readout, which in the original BIOS, it said that the processor was always running at 127.5 Celsius, which I didn't believe it. That was like the first red flag. It's like, something here is not right. So what else? The RAM tightening timings. I didn't mess with the timings. I just enabled the XMP profile, and since the Vengeance LPX 3200 was in the QVL list, it just worked. It just set it to 3.2. Boom, Bob's your uncle. Really didn't have to mess with it at all past that point. Let's see. Are you trying latest kernels for the Vega stuff? Yes, I am, Arthur. I'm currently running the stable 418. Well, they say it's stable. It's not actually a stable kernel. It's the vanilla kernels repo that is available for the Fedoras. It provides the stable, mainline, and what's the other one? Staging? Maybe it's a staging kernel, something like that. And I just went with the stable one, and it's version 418.16. I may be wrong, but the kernel, that kernel, the only thing it introduced was a bug with the Steam controller and rocket cars, because version 418 of the kernel comes with the Steam HID kernel module, which lets the Steam controller work even without Steam running. It gets recognized as a human interface device. And that particular module was causing the Steam controller to be recognized as a Player 2 controller in Rocket Cars, which means you couldn't do anything. You couldn't control the game because, no, you're Player 2, you don't get to control the game. So I had to blacklist it. I just added the rd.blacklist.driver line to the kernel line in Grub, and lo and behold, everything is back to normal. But it didn't actually fix any of the booting issues and any of the mode setting issues. It didn't fix any of that, so that was a little bit annoying. Which I'm going to keep. I'm going to keep trying with the newer versions of the kernel to see if somehow that gets fixed. Let's see, what else? Tightening the timings on Ryzen isn't likely to be successful. Yes, yeah, that seems to be what most people are saying. And if you can rely on the XMP profile to get to that sweet spot at 3200, you really don't want to mess with it any more than that. Her reviewers say the two series were less sensitive about the timing. There was less of a return on faster RAM. No personal experience though. That would require me to have the 2600 or the 2700 to actually test and run the benchmarks to see what the difference is. Because as someone with a 1600, I did the performance benchmarks with the RAM at the standard 2133 and then at the 3200. And even though it is a teeny tiny difference, it is very much well beyond the margin of error. So there is a significant performance improvement to be had there. Let's see. I mean, now I'm thinking of putting a Raspberry Pi Zero with a RetroPie and an Xbox controller. Yeah, that's totally doable. I actually already have my next project in mind. Not entirely. I'm not going to give out any deadlines or anything because I have no idea when I'll be able to actually get it together. But I already have it in mind, so keep tuned or stay tuned. Let's see. My goal today was to give a bunch of nerds a huge Woody. Okay. Hey, someone. It's the internet. People get off to the weirdest things. If someone gets off to me shoving a mini ITX motherboard, an APU, some RAM, and a TFX power supply into the cage of an Xbox 360, then who am I to say no? It's this was for me something to see if I could do it. It was also my first experience with taking out a Dremel and cutting and burring and drilling bits into where they needed to go, and I was mostly successful with that. You probably could point out that some of these cuts that you can see at the bottom here aren't exactly, ideal. Like this one near the power connector. Yeah, no, that doesn't look good, no matter how you look at it. But hey, it works, and it actually stays together, except for the tops and the bottoms. I just slightly dropped it. Good thing I have this very thick mouse mat to keep things from getting damaged. This is the bottom one. This one is fine. It works great for what it is. It fits in, slots in just perfect. This one was also supposed to be a bit for the bottom, but I wanted it to be on the top because the top has that little indent, I guess, to help those people who wanted to put a bigger hard drive on their Xbox. So yeah, that doesn't work. So I really wanted another bottom one, but I still haven't gotten that one to the shape that it needs to be. Let's see. Huge controller to put the Raspberry Pi in? Oh yeah. No, you could fit probably a full-size Raspberry Pi 3B Plus inside the Duke easily. Oh yeah, the Commodore 64 one, especially after the C64 Mini that they released being crap. Let's be honest, it was crap. It didn't even have a working keyboard. What the hell? But hey, let's see. Anyone else got some questions? I can waffle on for a bit more. It's not perfect. I will admit it's not perfect. The top there is just one of the examples of how imperfect it is. You can see that the way the dust filters were mounted on the inside of the front bit, it creates a noticeable dip over here, and that kind of sticks out. I also need to take out the little ring around the power button to clear out the paint and the clear coat so the LEDs actually shine through, because I was very keen on having the power LED and the hard drive activity LEDs stick out through the front, and they do actually shine from the little diffuser that the Xbox 360 comes with. So that one is working great. It just doesn't show from the front because everything has been spray painted and clear coated. How does the SteamBox run Talos? Okay, let's find. There we go. This is all on the medium preset, and you can see it OpenGL. Smooth, silky smooth, no problems whatsoever. It's the Vulkan result that's kind of crap. There's something. It has to be something with the RAD-V driver, because this is, of course, being an RX Vega, it needs the AMD GPU driver in order to work properly. And something with RAD-V isn't picking up. I wouldn't be surprised if it was just an issue of, how new the processor is and how untested it all is, especially in Linux land. So something with the RAD-V driver is making the Vulkan score that poor. It's yeah. Red Ring of Death when you get kernel panic. That is feasible. The way that they created the little diffuser here, you can easily replace this PCB with an actual different PCB with some LEDs mounted to it in the correct places, and you could totally do that easily. Had the Discord window on the left corner, using the tablet. All right. Let's see. Red Ring of Death LEDs. Yeah, this one wasn't red ringed. There was some other issue with this particular Xbox, but it had been JTagged. I had a look at the motherboard, and you could see like the evidence of the JTagging. So, yeah, if anyone wants to try and get it back to work, it's JTagged, so you can have it. How's the Fedora Steam session experience? Basically the exact same as it would be on SteamOS, with the one difference that you don't get that seamless transition. It's not seamless at all, even on SteamOS, but between the Steam Big Picture mode and the desktop session, the way that SteamOS handles it, it basically starts an entirely new X session to display the desktop with a different user, and it kind of works like that, and you have to work your way around that particular the way that particular session works. With the Steam version, the Fedora version that I currently have here, I can have the desktop session work with both the standard user that I created and the Steam user, which runs the Steam BPS session. And of course, big thanks to Negativo17. He doesn't have Fedora 28 packages for the SteamOS session and the backgrounds and everything else that it depends on, and the Steam compositor, obviously. But you can easily install the Fedora 27 ones, and they work just as well. So I was very happy to find out about that. Big kudos, of course, to Flibbity Jibabo Ethan Lee, who, well, on Google Plus a while back, he said that he was going to try and test the feasibility of Fedora as a SteamOS worthy operating system. And I'll be damned, he actually succeeded. So yeah, kudos. Kudos to you, Ethan. Let's see, anyone else have problems with GNOME 3 when in big picture mode and quoting games in the Steam link? It keeps minimizing Steam. Oh, quitting. That I'm not entirely sure that's a problem with GNOME 3, because that when you stop streaming a game, unless you're running Steam with the SteamOS flag, it always minimizes. The big picture mode always minimizes when you stop streaming, be it on GNOME 3 or on on my end I tested with Kitty and Cinnamon, and yeah, it keeps happening. So I'm not entirely. I will blame GNOME for a great deal, many things, and y'all know I have. But yeah, no, I don't think that one is GNOME's fault. So yeah, but yeah, it was my project for this year, and I hope y'all enjoyed it. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. That's what they're there for. Remember, the specs are up there, the benchmarks were up there. There's that slideshow of all the pictures that I took during the build. Don't worry, there will be an associated article. It just hasn't been written yet. I'm working on it, and I'm sure Jordan will let everyone know just how terrible my English is once again. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you, Jill. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. It's because of your support, and you keep showing up even though we keep being assholes on the internet, and you lot keep showing up. And for some reason you thought that it was a good idea maybe if we had a bigger budget. And well, since I moved to the UK and I had a bigger budget to spare myself, well, there we go. I built a PC inside an Xbox 360, and I called it the SteamBox 360. So thank you all very, very much for joining me. I'm Pedro Mateos. You can find me at Unaccounted4 on Twitter, plus Pedro Mateos on Google+. And of course, keep an eye out on linuxgamecast.com for the schedule where you'll be able to see all the shows that we're doing and when they air. You might want to keep that in mind if you decide to join us live at some point. Tomorrow, I will be joined by Mrs. Jill Bryant and a certain Ven Stone, who will all three of us will get together and tell you the good old Linuxy news on Linux Weekly Wednesdays. Jordan's stream is coming up on Thursday. I'm not entirely sure what they're doing. Ven's stream, of course, is on Fridays. There'll be some foobar going on, and of course on Saturday, the big show. Yes. So thank you. Thank you, one. Thank you, all of you, for being awesome and for, well, all the positive comments and all of the really awesome things that and awesome suggestions, and even the criticism that I got while building this teeny tiny little box. Thank you all very, very much. I'm out. But you're actually going to see me move the mouse so I can move the cursor to the button that says stop streaming. Bye. Bye.